So let me turn this on and kind of ask the first question, just gathering your perspective on like, what do you guys think a good man is? What does that mean to you?
You want to go?
No, I'm gonna let you go.
All right. Well, you're probably not going to get the answer that you want to expect, or you may expect from me. But so I don't necessarily like perpetuating the idea of good and bad. So I think to start, I would say a good man doesn't do that.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, in the sense that we recognize. There's a statement that we always profess, which is "I meet no one but me," and so the more I project good or bad onto somebody, is the more I'm really projecting onto myself, right? And so trying to move from that space and recognizing we're all on our journey, and everyone has a lane, right? And so if you're a biblical person, then you recognize that even the devil was an angel at one point in time and served a purpose, because in order to know light, you must know darkness, right? So to further that, then I would say that somebody once told me that a wise man is constantly seeking wisdom. And so the pursuit of their betterment as a North Star is also one of those things.
Awesome. Love that.
Thank you. Lawrence.
I don't know how you can follow up with that.
Yeah, those are some serious quotes, some serious wisdom.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can follow up with that. My definition is definitely changing. It's definitely changing. I had this idea of what a man was, and it's been completely shattered. Through not only what is going on in society right now, in terms of our redefinition or redefining what masculinity is. I'm just in a state of changing right now. I don't think there's one true answer for that.
100%. Yeah. I mean, the world moves fast and we're all people living in it. So we change with it, or I try to change with it. I'm curious. So I guess you guys had very different answers. In terms of like where you learned your frameworks for, or I guess how you developed your kind of two perspectives over time. Because those, like, you mentioned a biblical perspective, and then also like how we're always changing. Is that like an experiential thing, or is that from a mentor? Like how have you developed these perspectives on what it means to be a good man? And I know good man has its own problems with it, but a lot of guys subscribe to like it gets the conversation going, right? For a lot of people, it can be their North Star, like trying to be a good man, good person.
Oh, you want me to go first? This time? Okay. Over the years, I grew up in the Black church. So that was one of the initial places where I found out what a man was, or what I thought a man was. Not just in that, but I looked in hip hop as well too. That's a big part of my culture growing up, and so I used to look at the flashiest rappers who talk with the most game. I looked at the men on the corners of my block. That was my initial gathering of what a man was. And then I joined the Air Force, and I saw a completely different definition of what I thought a man was. So over the years, and even recently now, I've been reading, the book is actually over here on the counter, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover.
I've heard the archetypes, yeah.
Yeah, the archetypes. And so that has completely helped shifted what I believe a man is as well. And like I said, it's just a ever-growing evolution. I don't know if I truly answered the question.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you just explained how like you had a new experience, a new environment, new group of people, and it totally influences your perspective on like your own identity, as well as your own perspective on masculinity and what a good man is. That's awesome.
Yeah, my story is similar. It's an evolution. I grew up around all women, Catholic. My grandmother was into the Catholic Church heavy. And so I say that because Sundays I used to be kicking and screaming. She would drag me to Sunday school, all the things. And I was very rebellious. even growing up, trying to read the Bible and go to church and all these things. And I find myself in a lot of discord with very religious people. And so, but even in that, I learned through what I would call my, I guess, own perspective on religion, how to appreciate the tenements within it. So like understanding, right, that what we talked about before, Lucifer, the devil, was actually an angel beforehand, right? In the biblical context, yeah, that is what it is. But in a practical context, I consider myself a scientist and anthropologist and a physicist in some ways. And so from a practical sense, it makes sense. From a physics standpoint, right? Dark matter, light matter, in order to understand one, you also understand the other. And so I can put those things in context and be like, yes, I get it, right? But a lot of what I learned about manhood honestly came from the absence of male figures, right? And so I call it learning in the negative space, right? Because there's having positive examples of men, or having an example of a man in your life as a father, for example. And that could be, a good example or a bad example, to your point. But then not having a father or a man in your life in that way, also, you learn from that as well. And I think learning from also the men around me, you learn things and you pick things up, and perhaps a lot of bad things. And I would say that early on, when I was younger, in my teens, 20s, I thought the measure of a man was how many women you could have, right? Because that was what other people were talking about. Oh, you ain't got no hoes. You ain't got no girls. Like, whatever, I can get your girl if I want to. And so that really was a barometer by how manly you are, right? And then over time, I started to shift that to, well, is it truly how many women you have? Or is it really more so how intently you can satisfy one woman? And so questioning a lot of the paradigms that I experienced, because I was naturally questioning the order of things, because there wasn't a prominent male figure in my life. And I had a lot of females around me, or women, which then kind of attuned me to questioning a lot of things around manhood.
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting. I could see it going, but two different ways, right? Like you got really curious and started exploring. Right. And so it's really interesting that you took that path. Because I've had a lot of these conversations, and there's the other direction is kind of latching on to some male figures that might not be the healthiest, and not kind of having that curiosity to keep exploring what else is out there, can get guys stuck in a corner with not surrounded by the healthiest people. So yeah, it's thanks for sharing your path getting there. And so as you guys have developed your own frameworks for like your own versions of healthy masculinity, changing as they might be, how do you see those similar or different against what kind of versions of masculinity you see in society and social media? Kind of like your own version versus what you think is kind of getting out there in the populace.
Oh man, I think this is a whole conversation in and of itself, man. Because pop culture, pop media, whatever is, it really benefits from, in particular, and I can speak as a Black man because that's what I am, really benefits from the assimilation of the Black male's culture, right? And not just Black men in general, and so I think. Restate the question so I don't lose track of where I'm going with this, because it's a long.
It was a long question for sure, and I was basically asking like you guys to kind of do an analysis of what is my version of masculinity, and what kind of differences do I see in the broader society and social media.
Yeah, for sure. So I think So as an organization goes, Create the Space, we both work for Create the Space, which is a concierge for community and wellness focused on Black men as the last mile customer, which is what we call the last mile customer, because least amount of resources, least amount of support, the least amount of upliftment in that regard. And so if we were able to provide solutions along the way for the last mile customer, then everybody gets a solution, right? It's an engineering principle. And so thinking about the way we see culture today, particularly Black men are dehumanized in every way. Only recognizing value when it serves a purpose for entertainment or making an example of something. The statutes, the laws, whatever the case may be. And so masculinity then is perpetuated through what is okay through the lens of American society, right? And so you only see certain things on TV. You see Black Death on TV all the time. You see tropes on TV all the time. You see all of the things that are happening in the legal spaces, in the criminal or the justice impact space. And so these things are images that are consistently bombarding us, right, as Black men, and positioning us as dangerous or miscreants or criminals, despite whatever the circumstances are, right? And so I would say, like, from a societal perspective, if I didn't know any better, I would think that all Black men were dangerous and didn't have a future. And that would be the archetype. Right. And so for so many people, it is the archetype. Oh, I'm not going to live past 25. And that's what's ingrained in their minds. And so I think society has done a criminal job, a dangerously good one, I guess, if you could say, on the other side of the coin, at really dehumanizing Black men. And so masculinity then is skewed altogether. And so peeling away from that is the real work, and moving against the grain to say, hey, we're all individuals, right? And if I can find consistency on my own square, which is a common phrase that we talk about, is staying on your square, not being knocked off of your square, then I think masculinity is a true demonstration of finding your North Star and being purposeful and moving towards it.
Yeah, no, that is a whole conversation. Yeah, you're totally right. And thank you for peeling back the onion on all the layers. Because it's like an intersectionality, right? Like masculinity being influenced by these pieces of your identity. And I think it is, like you said, it's important to note that so much of pop culture, music and media, it comes from communities that are marginalized. They're in leverage for the populace, but aren't taken care of, like you said, the last mile customers. If you're going to use like the engineering or Amazon example, like the last mile customers, the farthest ones away, in which adds a layer for how far society's definition of masculinity, in particular Black masculinity, is from the frameworks you've developed. So the difference is super clear.
For sure. And I appreciate you even providing that additional context.
No, I can't follow up that.
You don't have to. One team, one dream.
I can.
Well, tell me more about the team, the dream, Create the Space. I'd love to hear more about that as well.
Absolutely. I'll let you go.
All right, here we go. All right. So as he stated earlier, Create the Space is a concierge service for men seeking community and wellness. We definitely focus on mental health. And actually, this is the founder, Denzel, right here. And so, yeah, we just create community for men. We just create community for men, and it's the most unique thing I've ever seen in my life. We had a community luck on Sunday, and there were dozens of Black men, or at least a dozen, came up to me and said that they'd never seen a space like this. We create space for men to be comfortable, to feel welcome, to feel at home, We offer yoga. We offer book club. We just recently dropped a podcast that focuses on mental health and the well-being of who we are as Black men. We have a blog as well. We have several live events through the month. And yeah, it's just a community.
Creating community. Yeah, no, it's so important.
So we've termed the coin community as a service, largely because our biggest service is community. Sorry.
No, you good.
But so much of what Lawrence is talking about is really uplifting and creating avenues by which people can be their best selves, right? And it's not a far concept to have a community potluck. Like that happens anywhere and everywhere, right? But what is a foreign concept is an organization putting up a beacon and saying that we are leading in the pinnacles or in the space of creating a community around wellness, right? And if you want to be a part of this community, then the tenets that with which we run, operate, authenticity, freedom, and equity, those are the things that we stand for in every program, every event that we put together. And so when we hold this space, the spaces that we hold are cultivated in that way. And then the people that fill them are pursuing the betterment of their mental health, their wellness, their community, their situations. And it starts in my belief with proximity. And within proximity, you can build community. And then within community, of course, you can make a lot of change.
Yeah, that's awesome. The work you guys are doing. Community for men is so important for the health of men. And you were saying like a potluck isn't a game changing idea, but for a lot of guys it is. I mean, like a lot of guys are just seeking real connection and acceptance. And so community is no small thing. And it does take some intentionality. Like you got to put some energy towards it to gather people. So I love that.
And not only that, but we're also demonstratively showing, right? So it's like cooking food, right? Okay, well, the potluck is also about bringing and contributing. And so making sure that the energy that you're putting into preparing your meal goes to the community. That's a demonstration for people, right? Because when it comes to Black men, a lot of younger Black men in particular, I can say, well, we don't cook. We don't do a lot of the domestic things. Because we're so busy living life in the streets, trying to survive, trying to do whatever the case may be, that a lot of these things that people may take for granted are novelties for some folks. And so really just demonstrating that, okay, we're here taking care of ourselves. We're not ashamed to talk about vulnerability. We're not ashamed to talk about being in jail or incarcerated or whatever the hell the case may be. We're here to talk about being better for our families. We're creating environments where you can bring your friends, you can bring your spouses, and you can bring your children. And we can also have a good time and have these conversations in non-clinical spaces, in a very familiar way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, talking about deep things in a normal circumstance, right? Like it's familiar. Yeah. No, it's so important. Before I forget, I wanted to say, like, when we share, like, if you have any resources or promo stuff or like create the space visuals or events, like I want to make sure I portray your work accurately and effectively. And so that when we share these resources, it captures like what you described. So I want to, like, after I go through and pull snippets, like I want to make that part collaborative as well. And if there's things you guys want to send me that don't just happen in this conversation, like it's definitely kind of open for that.
Oh, we have plenty.
One of our producers over here.
Awesome. I'm just starting. I'm not the most technically advanced video editor and graphic designer and all that stuff. So I appreciate how hard production of any kind of content is. There's always a lot more work behind the scenes. So the other thing I wanted to do was in the same vein of like sharing our platform with like our followers. You guys just saw this post and reached out. Whether there was something you wanted to air, whether it's an anecdote or something about your work or about your past that you thought would be useful for other followers to see, something you learned recently, like about yourself or masculinity, or something that you've encountered in your work. If you don't have anything, totally fine. But like, we've been trying to, like, our platform is only just comprised of our followers. We want to open it up. And if there's anything you think our followers would benefit from, even if it's just like more discussion about your work, then we'd love to hear it.
Well, I mean, there's so many places we could go in terms of book recommendations, or, you know, selfishly, we teach a lot of courses and workshops and things like this. So outside of this, I would say, I think the one message that I would like people to take away in terms of masculinity is being graceful. Being, even if you're graceful with yourself, I think being incrementally more graceful with yourself and the world around you. Because one thing that we lack is connection. And in order to get closer in terms of connection, I think we need to start being more graceful with ourselves, allow ourselves to be empathetic, not only to ourselves, but others. See ourselves. I go back to the quote, I meet no one but myself. I meet no one but me. When I move through the world with that perspective, I think it changes my interactions, changes my outcomes, and changes my experiences, allows me to be a lot more patient in situations that I otherwise wouldn't be, recognizing that all the world's a stage and merely people are reflections of my own reality. And so perhaps that if I open my mind up to something that I wasn't able to open my mind up before, I can learn something new.
Yeah. Being open and empathetic of other people's differences.
Mm-hmm. And so that's the one, I think that's the one word I would lend.
Empathetic.
Yeah.
What about you, Lawrence?
No, I think it kind of coincides with what he said, as far as being empathetic. There are men that are wanting to be vulnerable, but they're afraid. There's a fear-based, like, honestly, a lot of men are afraid of being vulnerable because they understand usually what happens to men that are vulnerable. So I want other men just to have that open ear, have that open heart, because you may have a brother or a friend, former roommate, college, friend, fraternity brother, whatever it is, fellow veteran, that they are reaching out, and to not just look at the surface, but just have an open ear. That's all.
Yeah, that's huge.
To speak on that, so we're actually building out a workshop that includes somatics. So I kind of want to bring that into the discussion. I think a great resource, and I can share these with you, document over email after the conversation, but we have a couple of folks within our community that lead body work and coaching. And I think one thing that we do as men is hold a lot of our energy, our frustration, our anger, and our experiences and our traumas in our bodies. We know how to be relatively physical nature creatures, but the expression, the emotive, the relinquishing, the communication has not been the primary lever. And so I think, really trying to tap into how your body keeps score, really, and then being able to express that on the other side of it is something that I think is very useful for men to experience. And so I would love to share those resources.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's so, I mean, the whole sphere of wellness is often neglected by men, but for sure, body work is one of the last frontiers too, I think, where the body is often seen as a vehicle for performance and or attracting women, but not for like your vehicle that moves you around. Let's take care of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing I heard you say, Lawrence, was like that guys do want to be vulnerable. And I've seen it, like, even in these conversations, like we were flooded with responses to the point where I'm booked out for like months. But it's because guys want to talk, like I'm always surprised at how one, how many there are and how quickly people open up. And it comes from a place of strength. Like you guys being vulnerable and sharing, like, so clearly comes from a place of strength. And I think for guys getting to that point of view where sharing and being vulnerable is strong is huge. So I love that point.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for, actually creating the platform and asking the question. And I think that's what so many people need. Is one of my close friends always says, you can't see what you can't be, right? Or you can't be what you can't see, I say, rather. And so just being able to demonstrate, give people examples of what's possible. A lot of people, to your point, really want to say something, but they won't say it until they hear it from somebody else first.
Yeah, awesome. And the more conversations prompt even more conversations. And so I think with the last few minutes, I'll be back and forth with you, Lawrence. It's so nice to meet you guys, Lawrence and Denzel. You guys are doing awesome work. And I hope us as our platform as like facilitator, kind of moving pieces around and blowing up stories and people and perspectives and work is effective and funneling more people towards a good thing.
Well, like I said, thank you for the time and the energy. You got a great smile too, by the way.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate it. Gotta stay smiling.
We appreciate you, man.
Awesome. Well, we'll be in touch and excited for what's coming. We got some good things coming.
Definitely. Thank you for initiating the conversation as well, too.
100%. Nice to meet you guys, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.